after what I just went through.
Hey, that's not my problem. Get
You
you.
sound much better today.
Yeah, I moved up into like the There's a lot of people down on like the first level of media, so I moved up and like it's a little quieter up here. I'll move
Oh,
back down when the game starts, but I moved up in a little different area.
sorry we are late.
Not
My
my fault.
my earpiece was plugged into the computer, not working. Didn't unplug it, reset the computer, and magically it started working. I don't know why my computer does this, and I was using this like all day today too, so it shouldn't have. It's not like I was like letting it sit around, which I will
Yeah.
sometimes, and then it doesn't work. And like even though I don't get that, it's like more of like okay, like I expected it to happen.
Yeah.
But something like today, man, what a mess. I'll tell you what, I'm not convinced you should be allowed to bring kids into a restaurant before they're like 8.
What happened? Would you like to share?
Well, my dad and I went out to eat tonight, and the kids just making noise the whole time.
Brutal.
You should either not be allowed to bring them, or you should have to pay extra. You should have to pay a cover
Yeah.
because you
How
are
old was the kid?
inconveniencing many a guest.
How old was the kid?
Couldn't have been older than 3 or 4.
Damn. How's my audio
Landon would
today?
love this, by the way. If he's not in the chat right now, he would love this.
How's the audio today? Can you hear the background noise still?
You sound normal. You sound like you're at home.
Oh,
I
wow.
can hear it very, very faintly.
Good. That works. I'll come up here if I need to. We'll stay up here. But yeah, Celtics Heat tonight. Back to the normal starting lineups for Miami and Boston because Jimmy Butler is back in town, back ready to play the Celtics. Put out a nice Instagram message for all his friends in Boston, just to let him know that he's back. What do you make of that, Sam? I think it'll definitely be a harder game with Butler there, but like how big of a difference?
Well, I was telling you and Bobby yesterday, I'm at the point where I'm disappointed when they don't blow a team out, never mind lose. So
Okay.
I think Wednesday's game was a tough game, and at the end of the game, I tweeted out, I was like, I can't believe I have to watch this team again on Friday. They are a
Yeah.
bunch of pests. They are annoying, but I still think the Celtics should be able to handle them. Jonathan
Yeah.
makes a good point. He asks about the zone, even with Butler returning. Spoelstra loves the zone against the Celtics, and the Celtics really struggle against it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Jacken says they shredded it, they did. At the very beginning, they did shred it, and then they sucked for a while. And then Tatum said, okay, I'm going to score 49 points, and they won.
Yes, exactly. I was talking with a friend of the podcast, John Corrales, before the game. And we talked about this, the man thing. John was saying how he expects them to probably play a little bit more man with Jimmy, but at the same time, John was saying how he thinks the Celtics will defend Miami very differently as well. He thinks that they're going to completely change the way they play defense. He thinks instead of switching nothing, which they did on Wednesday, he thinks they'll switch everything. And he thinks, he was talking about how Joe Mazzulla before the game was saying how these kind of 2-game series are kind of not necessarily, playoff the same thing as the playoffs, but they're a good, sense of what you can do in the playoffs. And Miami being a team the Celtics could potentially play in the first round if they get back up to the 8th or 7th seed and Boston finishes 1 or 2, then, it's a good test to throw out what you can against this Miami team on offense and defense and see how they respond. So I think it'll be a good test. I think you could be in for a different game than the one you saw on Wednesday. Obviously, Butler is a part of that, but just in general, the way they play each other, it's kind of a chance to test out different matchups against a potential playoff opponent.
I agree. I think Butler being back changes it quite a bit. He's someone in the playoffs that really does a lot of work for Miami, plays well for them, is the guy. In the regular season, you don't see it as much, even though he does lead them in scoring, which I was surprised about when I learned that Wednesday. But he's still able to do it. He just scores in different ways than the flashy guys. He does a lot of work inside from the mid-range. He's not shooting a bunch of threes. He's getting himself to the line a decent amount. They should be able to still beat this Miami team, but it's not going to be Max Strus scoring all the points today. It might be Jimmy Butler. That's another thing. Like, you had Bam making a 3, which I think they said was his first ever on Wednesday. And then Strus, who's
first
been
this season,
first this season.
I think. At the very
And then
least,
Strus, who's been horrible this season, went off and decided he's going to make shots again. So who knows? I know Miami's going to come out with a chip on their shoulder, though. They are going to want to play hard. Adebayo got tossed at the end of the game on Wednesday, he's going to be coming out playing harder than he did that day.
Mhm.
They're gonna have it in for the Celtics. Every game they win in a row, every other game that they're at the top of the conference, at the top of the league, that's an extra target on their back. It's going to be even harder for
Exactly.
them.
100%. I agree. Like you said, Adebayo got tossed, excuse me, at the end of their last game. Jimmy Butler's message on the plane was effectively, "I'm coming for you, Boston." Remember, this is the team that the Celtics bounced in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. And in the minds of a lot of Miami fans, the only reason they lost was because of Max Strutz's toe being on the out of bounds line or heel or whatever you want to call it. Like, this Miami team and their fan base clearly have a grudge against Boston. You could argue that there's been a rivalry over the past few years between these two sides. I mean, they've met in the conference finals twice out of the last 3 seasons, and the other time they were battling at the end of the season for playoff positioning, and it ended up in both of them being bounced in the first round by the Nets and the Bucks, respectively. But these two teams have faced each other a lot over the past 2 seasons, and whenever they play each other, it is a hard game. And right now, the Celtics are 18-4, and the Heat are 10-12. One team is attempting to stay afloat atop of the Eastern Conference standings. The other team is fighting to get into the playoff picture. Right, the Heat are going to be playing hard. Jimmy Butler, that's another element to it. Jimmy Butler hasn't played in like 8 games. This is his first game back since being injured, and he's looking to carry his team back into the play-in tournament at the very least, because right now I think they're sitting in 11th, right? So he's going to come out playing hard. The Celtics obviously have been this dominant force over the past however long, whole season really. But this Heat team is not someone that's just going to roll over and say, it's the best team, we'll do what we can. They're gonna play hard. And yes, exactly, like Mitch said, Heat and the Bucks are probably Boston's biggest rivals, regardless of how good they've been this season, because they've been struggling. The Heat are a good team, regardless of their record. They're a strong opponent, and the Celtics need to treat it as such.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off you saying they're not going to roll over, because you had the best example of that Wednesday night in the first quarter when Boston came out red hot. They went up double digits right away, and by the end of the quarter, the game was close again. You're not going to get away with, or not get away with, that's the wrong phrase, but you're not going to just be able to come out, blow the doors off, and call it a day. We saw it Wednesday. They're going to have even more of a chip on their shoulder tonight after losing that game, which was kind of tight for most of it. Much to my frustration, but Bam's going to come out playing for real. Butler's probably ready to get in there and play after sitting out the last 8. You said, right, Jack? 8 in a row for him. He hasn't played. He's going to be ready to get in there. You kidding me? He might have some rust, but he's going to be playing hard for sure. Lowry is always a pain in the ass, always falling all over the place, can't stay on his feet, and drawing fouls and being a defensive pest. They might lose today. They might. They shouldn't, but they might.
Yeah, I agree. I wrote something about, because this came up too. I wrote an article for Celtics Blog. I think one of the biggest issues for the Celtics this season that hasn't necessarily affected wins and losses, and so no one's really talking about it, is the turnovers. They're actually a top 10 team in turning the ball over, and that's a good thing, as in the top 10 least turnovers per game. They're only averaging, I think, 13.5, which is really good. But effectively what I wrote about is when they do turn the ball over, it's not once. It is a bunch of times in the span of 2 minutes, and it leads to a big run. And then in turn, the starters are forced to play more minutes, and it makes the game that much more difficult on themselves, right? And so I wrote about it in the example I gave in the Miami game. The Celtics started the game with a 20-8 run. Yes, Mitch, I'm at the Garden. I'm here tonight,
Big
up on the
time.
9th floor. The Celtics started off with a 20-8 run against the Heat on Wednesday. But with 8 minutes and 5 seconds to go in the first quarter, they turned the ball over, and that started a stretch of 5 turnovers in 5 minutes. In that time, the Heat went on a 19-8 run and were beating the Celtics by the time there was 3 minutes left in the first quarter, right? Like they gave up their 12-point lead in 5 minutes because they turned the ball over 5 times.
Felt like I was watching the playoffs again. I got nostalgic.
Exactly. And then you look back to a couple games ago against the New Orleans Pelicans. I bet we all remember that game. Again, another getting some high praise. Another playoff caliber team in the Pelicans. They held a 14-point lead with 8:03 left to go in the third quarter. Jaylen Brown coughed up the ball, and that started a run of 9 turnovers in 8 minutes for the Celtics. Right. Another, effectively 1 turnover per minute stretch. And then in the fourth quarter, Celtics are up by 13 with 7 minutes, 21 seconds left. And then they turned the ball over 3 times in less than a minute. And by the time there was 6:19 left, which is less than or just over a minute of game time, the Pelicans were down by 6, and they cut it within 6. Like turnovers haven't been a huge issue for the Celtics in terms of affecting wins and losses. But when they turn the ball over once, it turns into an avalanche, and it's affecting how long the Stars have to play, how difficult it is for the Celtics to close these games. And just because it hasn't showed up in the losses column doesn't mean it hasn't been an issue. And for the most part, the turnovers are things that they can control. I had it here. Against the Heat, their 5 turnover run in the first quarter was 3 bad passes, a stepping out of bounds call, and an offensive foul. Against the Pelicans, their first one was 5 bad passes, 3 lost balls, and a travel. And in the fourth quarter, it was a travel and 2 lost balls. Like, most of them are not forced errors. The Celtics are running into traffic. They're passing the ball. They're stepping out of bounds. They're an offensive foul call. And while some of that has to do with the other team being fine and good, a commenter on Celtics blog pointed out to me that the Celtics are top 5 in the league in opposing team steals per game. As in, the turnovers they are committing aren't steals, aren't earned by the other team. They are just the Celtics coughing the ball up. So it's a very silent problem, but it happened against the Heat the other night, and so I think it should be something to look out for tonight as I'm at the Garden and Celtics are coming out of the tunnel.
Well, sometimes, you're so nasty that you have to be fair to the other team and you have to kind of give them a leg up. So you give the ball away a couple times to make it even, then you still blow them out. But in all seriousness, I will say this about the turnovers. You're absolutely right. They are stringing them together like that, but they're finding their footing very quickly. You're not seeing it affect them for the entire game. It's short stints instead of, listen, Wednesday against Miami, they turned it over quite a bit. They had a playoff-esque number of turnovers. However, they are finding their footing. Even in that Miami game, Miami had cut the lead down a couple times in that third quarter, and Tatum came out and hit back-to-back threes twice. Not just one time did he have a back-breaking sequence to stop the run. Twice he did that. They are much more clutch this season. Last season in the playoffs, we would see them lose during stints in the game that were very important, during clutch moments, even if it was in the fourth quarter. Throughout NBA games, especially in the playoffs, there are always huge sequences where it makes or breaks a team's day. We saw a lot of times in the playoffs, specifically the finals, where the Celtics struggled in those situations. That's why they lost the Warriors. They didn't take the chance to step on their necks when they had it. Even in the Game 3 win at the Garden, when they effectively blew them out at the end, they were up that entire game, and then they went behind in the third quarter. And they luckily found their footing and closed it. We aren't seeing them really go behind much. I'm talking after Wednesday when they literally did all of this in the first quarter. But for the season as a whole, you really aren't seeing a lot of flip-flopping for the lead. Once they get it, they keep it, which is really enjoyable to watch for me.
I agree. It hasn't, like I said, it hasn't been a problem that has caused them to lose games, but it's been a problem that's made the wins more
Brogdon,
difficult.
too, on Wednesday. Huge.
Yeah, Brogdon was huge. Conversation in the chat about the Cleveland Cavaliers, because we didn't really mention them when we brought up the Heat and the Bucks. I wasn't really talking about potential guys or teams that could hurt the Celtics in the playoffs. Just talking about rivals, but the Cavs are obviously really good. They're one of 2 teams that have managed to beat the Celtics this season. They beat them twice, both in OT. They're a threat for sure. We had something in the chat talking about how the Cavs need at least another key. Someone said something about Crowder. I need to find. Was it Landon? Someone said something about Crowder, and I don't know if it was saying the Cavs should trade for Crowder or they should send it to. Thank you, Jack, and I saw you tweet out my article on Twitter. I appreciate you,
Mitch. There you go.
Yeah, but was he talking about the Cavs? Yes. Okay, yeah. Talking about the Cavs, sure, yeah, I think that could be a thing. I thought it was talking about how the Celtics should trade for Crowder, and I don't think that's necessarily a possibility. Hello, Phil. How are we doing today? But
Phil's in the chat. He's going to be doing fist bumps. I love when they do fist bumps in the chat. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. They just send the fist emoji and they do a fist bump.
Beast. I'll take this time to remind you, we might have to cut it short depending on how quickly the Celtics shoot in these. Not soon, but it might have to be preemptively a tiny bit before 7:30, depending on when they start, because I do need to get down back to my normal seat. But I will say that shout out to you guys, because out of the 10 of you watching, 8 are on How About Them Celtics and 2 are on Guy Boston. So you already know what's going on. And if you're not, because I know I haven't seen Jonathan in here much, or Mitch. John and Mitch, if you haven't yet, I'll talk just to you two. Fist bumps all around. John and Mitch, if you haven't headed over to the How About Them Celtics podcast YouTube channel, I'll tell you this. Head on over there, hit the subscribe button. There's a new podcast out today on the How About Them Celtics podcast YouTube channel. Us with Bobby Manning of CLNS Media and Celtics Blog talked about Al Horford's extension, Robert Williams' potential return, Jayson Tatum being potentially the greatest Celtic to ever play when it's all said and done. A lot of hot topics there. So How About Them Celtics podcast YouTube channel. You can see that podcast, and we would obviously greatly appreciate you if you would get it over there, hit the subscribe button, all that good stuff. But great podcast today. Comment, all that stuff. Great podcast.
We had a good show yesterday
came out today with Bobby.
when we recorded it.
And I'll say this too. If you are not the type of person who enjoys sitting down for 1 hour long talks, which I can admit sometimes it's tough to sit there. Hello, Mitch. I appreciate you. I remember you. I'm just saying. Jonathan already there. Appreciate you as well. But there will be shorter episodes coming in the upcoming days. Today, we put out an 8-minute snippet from the podcast about Celtics signing Al Horford to a contract extension. On the 3rd, so tomorrow, you'll get the snippet of Robert Williams' return. On the 4th, day after that, you'll be getting Jayson Tatum potentially being the best player. On the 5th, you're getting us from a couple episodes ago talking about a potential Celtics-Lakers trade. And then the day after that, you'll be getting a video about the Celtics offense. So you have plenty of content coming up if you can't sit down and listen to the full pod, which we would obviously recommend. But there you go. So lots of stuff coming over for you on the How About Them Celtics podcast YouTube channel. So we'd appreciate it. Phil asking, do the Celtics sweep the homestand? This is their 6th and final game of the homestand, something like that. 5 games.
Yep, they've won 5.
You think they sweep tonight?
They should. That's always my answer. They should. I think this is a spot where they could lose, just because it's always tough to beat a team twice in a row. Like literally when you play them 2 games in a row. Also, you're adding Butler back in. And the way that game ended on Wednesday with Bam getting tossed is something that like makes you think, is he going to come out with a real chip on his shoulder with a fire under his ass, and is he going to be ready to play?
Yeah.
That could catch up to the Celtics. But I don't know. I mean, Brown really was in foul trouble for a lot of that game on Wednesday, and he still ended up with almost 30 points. He might also have a fire under his ass, not trying to get in foul trouble and trying to get out there so he can actually play.
Absolutely. Again, talking to John Corrales before the game, he predicted a Jaylen Brown night. So coming after Birkin's heart, saying that Tatum could have a bunch of assists, but he thinks Brown is going to be the scorer tonight. We have Jackin promoting a potential Lakers trade. It is not our trade proposal, Jackin, but we did talk about it 2 podcasts ago. So the one that came out, on Wednesday, I believe it was, a trade. I'm not going to spoil it. Go listen to the podcast.
No spoilers.
We talked about it.
You want the information, you earn it. You go watch the podcast. Go watch
the specific 8-minute video on it will be out December 5th, but you can find it in the podcast. The title of that podcast, I'll tell you, has the trade in the title. So it's the Celtics historical offense and an insane trade proposal. That is the title of the podcast if you want to listen. I think we talk about the trade later on. So I'll let you pick through because a view is a view, and we appreciate you. Middleton is back for the Bucks tonight against the Lakers. That's huge. Again, in my conversation before the game, talking with John, he was saying it's crazy how the 2 best teams in the league have done it without 2 of their star players, right? Chris Middleton's been out for the Bucks all year. Celtics have been without Robert Williams all year, and yet they are pretty clearly the 2 best teams in the NBA. It's very impressive, and if those guys get back and get rolling and in a rhythm, it's tough for me to see anybody else winning the title this year, right? Maybe you look at Phoenix or Memphis or somebody out west who could potentially sneak in there and shock the East, but the East looks real good, and we appreciate you, Jackin. Thank you.
there may be one. I don't think it is outside of these 2 teams. I think whenever they meet in the playoffs is the finals, essentially.
Okay.
2, as far as Phoenix goes, there may be some rocky waters coming ahead for them.
Yes.
What are you gonna do?
I'm trying to read the injury report, but my eyes are terrible.
I don't think it's anything special. We would know.
No. Well, they were
on Miami's side.
Yeah, there were 9 players listed on Miami's injury report, but only Oladipo and
Miami loves an injury report. They love an injury report. Every game in the playoffs last year, it was like the whole team, and then they all played. It was some miracle magic. The injury staff would work.
Yeah. So miracle magic is right. But yeah.
Jonathan says hopes Middleton looks bad so they can get a big lead first place. I'm rooting for Milwaukee tonight, man. I need the Lakers to cool off. You need to calm down over there.
Yeah, there you go. I don't root for anybody to play bad. I think it'll be a
I
good
do.
series. I know you do.
Oh,
But
individual players I still do, but not Middleton. Even though he is a rat
yeah,
and he destroys the Celtics every time, but
he does.
he's not on the
I will
list.
say, it's easier for me to dislike the Heat because of the way they carry themselves, and I respect the Heat and I like the Heat. But I can understand why like Celtics fans dislike the Heat. Outside of the Giannis bully thing, which I know I don't really care about, and I know you don't really care about either, I don't think. It's
What
hard
is
for me to
this?
hate many players on that Bucks team. Just Giannis being like, oh, he's too rough. He's not a basketball player. He's a football player. Like that whole angle of
that thing. Yeah, who cares?
exactly. Like I see Celtics fans complain about that, but outside of that, it's hard for me to understand how people can dislike the Bucks. Right? Like Middleton doesn't do anything. He's just quiet and he balls. Same thing with Drew Holiday. Giannis, I would say, is probably one of the most likable players in the league. Like it sucks that one of Boston's biggest rivals is so likable. I'll put it that way.
Well, I'll tell you what, their fans do the job. Their
Their
fans
fans
make
are
it so you
brutal.
don't like them. There you go.
That is fair.
The
Bucks
players
fans
are fine.
something.
They have a good amount of good players that you can root for on that team. You're absolutely right. Specifically, Giannis, you have to respect the hell out of him for not leaving or wanting to jump ship, and he stayed and won a title. That rules in a small market. Respect. Are you kidding me? Awesome, good for it. But it's time to take a break. You know, the boys here are ready to go, and they look like they are primed for a title, and this is crazy. I mean,
I agree.
I'm telling you, when they don't blow a team out, I'm like, what's going on? What's wrong? What's the problem? What do they need to do differently? Because I'm so used to seeing them just run through teams at this point of the season.
I will say most of the teams that they're struggling against, outside of maybe Chicago, who they've lost to twice, are like good teams. Like they're not necessarily struggling against those bad teams. Like they blew out the Wizards, they blew out the Hornets. They've struggled against teams like the Pelicans and the Heat, who are playoff teams. So I'm not too obsessed. They're not going to win every game by that much. But if they're struggling against the teams that are supposed to be good, it's an easier pill to swallow. Check and saying Sixers fans are pissed. Embiid is not in the top 10. Embiid hasn't played this season, so it's tough to put him in the top 10 MVP voting when he's not really getting any minutes. So
2 guys for the Celtics cracking the top 10. I wonder how often that actually happens. Like by the end of the season.
I mean, yes, by the end of the season, yes. I was going to say, I know the Bucks had 3 early on. When they were
Brooke Lopez was there.
I mean, hey, don't crap on Brooke Lopez. Dude has been amazing this season.
I'm going to hate that.
No, I'm very much looking forward to December 25th, Christmas Day, Celtics Bucks. That's going to be a phenomenal game. I like.
It's going to be here.
I'm very excited.
They better win.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Different when it's on the road, but when you're at home, you really have to win.
Yes. I agree.
Tell you what, another way to win. Pick of the night, presented by Smash the Odds at Smash Odds on Twitter. They have had a week to remember, giving out winners all week. Last night, another clean sweep for them if you're paying for the premium service. Free pick on the show. Jaylen Brown, over 24.5 points. We talked about it earlier, predicting a big night for the man. Smash the Odds thinks so too. Mm-hmm. On the show, they are 12-4, giving out the picks. Big winners on the Bannertown build-up. My pick, Grant, over 1.5 threes. Jack echoes the pick. Put 2 units on it.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I'll echo that one. That being said, if Derek White, actually, hell, I don't even need to look. Take Derek White over on points. Take Derek White over on threes. He's been balling. That is my
over 1.5 for Derek White for threes, but
yeah.
that's minus 139. Let's see what the points is. If it would load. Derek
and
White.
Jonathan, that means you got 2 more years left.
10.5.
You can place these bets. Oh yeah, 10.5 for Derek White. I'm taking all day. But yeah,
you have to be 21 to bet. Where?
I think so, right? Isn't it 21 to bet?
Not in Rhode Island.
To bet.
Rhode Island, it's 18.
Well,
you go to Twin River and you put all the chips on blackjack there. It's like after you graduate, that's what you do.
I don't think it's legal in Massachusetts sport betting it. So
no, it's not. Nope. Don't do it if you're there. Don't do it. We didn't tell you to do it.
Yeah, we didn't. We're just giving friendly advice if you were to do it.
But if you are to do it, subscribe to Smash the Odds and tell them the 2 handsome guys talking hoops sent you over.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please do. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, you want to wrap early so you can get to your seat?
We can get out of there. I'll head down to my seat. Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. All of you guys on the How About Them Celtics podcast. Hey, if there's 7 of you in here on the How About Them Celtics podcast YouTube channel, head on over to our recent podcast, the one we put out today. It's about an hour long with Bobby Manning. Leave it a like. Help us boost it in the algorithm. If all of you guys leave it a like, it should be at around 10 likes, which is good for us. And we'd appreciate you.
On there. I haven't even done it yet.
I haven't either. Go leave the latest podcast on YouTube, like, help it hit the algorithm, rhythm, help more people come see us every day before the Celtics games. Come hang out, start a community. We appreciate you guys. Check us both out on Twitter. That's below our faces. Check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. That's How About Them C's, bottom of the screen. Put out a short and a video today. Short with Bobby talking about the Grant and Al Horford contract negotiations. And yeah, this has been the Bannertown Build-Up. We are here 30 minutes before every Celtics
game. We hit 150. We are way oh my God.
150 views?
154 subs.
Oh, wow.
Where'd that come from? Did you buy bots?
I did not buy bots. We were at 148 last time I looked.
I know. All right.
Wow. Well, legends, we appreciate y'all. Maybe it was the latest short. We'll look. But anyways, we'll get you guys out of here in time for the game. We appreciate y'all. Go leave a like on the latest podcast. 30 minutes before every Celtics game, and we'll see you guys for the next one.